episode 9 of Aeolian Sands. And on this week's episode, we'll be exploring the world of storytelling. We'll also look at where to spend your marketing dollars. And to help me do that, I'm joined by Vernon D Cruz, a 25-year marketing veteran. Great to have you on, Vernon.
Thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, really excited to get into this one. And before the cameras went live and the mics were turned on, I was having a chat with you around how I just think your name, Vernon D Cruz, it's so powerful. It's one which you sort of really remember.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure about the powerful aspect, but it is kind of unique. I get that a lot. But there's an interesting dynamic to it. So the D Cruz is Portuguese ancestry because my grandparents, both maternal and paternal, were from Goa, which was a Portuguese colony. And I was born in Pakistan, which is a really unusual name for Pakistan because I'm Catholic minority there. And eventually immigrated to Canada. So been in different parts of the world, lived in Sri Lanka for a while and the UAE and London as well. So yeah.
I'm really excited to get into your experience because it has taken you all around the world and you've kind of done lots of different sectors. We'll get into that into a moment. I'm the kind of person who tends to have lots of tabs open on their laptop. I've got apps open on my phone all the time. Are you the kind of person who is like that, or are you the kind of person who's super organized, super neat, and you always only have one tab open?
Oh my goodness, no, I definitely do not have one tab. I have various tabs. So I think on Chrome, I just shut down maybe a couple, but I probably had maybe 12 to 14 open in the morning. And it's the same on my phone. You know, at times there are like 27 of them on the browser. And my wife, on the other hand, is also a marketer, but she's super organized. And, you know, she only has one open at one point in time, or maybe two.
Yeah, people are either one or the other. They tend to be the person who's like myself and a bit scattergun and having lots of tabs open. Doesn't mean I don't know what's on them. I probably know everything that's on the tabs. It's organized in my head, but Correct. If anyone else were to look at it and open it, like, wow, this is all over the place. All right, cool. So let's get into a little bit and a bit about yourself. What drove your career path? Because as you said, you've kind of traveled the world. You've been in parts of Asia and the Middle East and Europe and North America. Tell us a bit about that career path and how it evolved. What started you out into this wonderful world of brand and marketing?
Well, I think I discovered I wanted to be in marketing at a fairly young relative age. If I remember correct, it was probably 18 or 19 at the time when I just began university. And you know, I typically took science in my GCSEs. It was dry in my opinion. I liked it, but it was dry. So I was never a numbers person to begin with. Yeah, I learned numbers on the job, and that's fine when you're managing P&Ls. But you know, trigonometry and the whole thing was not my cup of tea. So when I got into uni, and of course, you know, you suddenly have from a spectrum of 4 level subjects to you know, dozens which you're doing in uni. I think the inclination or the excitement happened in the whole business field, right? So I was doing an MBA and I was really intrigued by the marketing one. I think what worked for me in my uni is that a lot of the marketing professionals were also CMOs or, you know, leading companies. You know, there was a CEO of Gillette at that point in time. So there was a lot of inspiration coming from it, just seeing people who are doing the job in reality teaching you the subject. But naturally I get to, you know, when I used to drive, I used to analyze ads, analyze campaigns at a subconscious level. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me eventually that I wanted to be in the marketing arena. Unilever was always one of the companies. It was really Unilever and Pepsi, except that Pepsi was in a different city. And I was quite fortunate to get in. It was quite a competitive program, but quite blessed and humbled, you know, that I eventually got in. But I think that worked for me wonderfully because Unilever is a classical, you know, the marketing school. So it was kind of an extension of my uni, and I was learning, you know, along the way. So I was with them 4 years in Pakistan. I was then got approached for a role in Sri Lanka on secondment. And I took that role as well. So I was in Sri Lanka for almost 2 years. And then, you know, a change in, not career, but a change in job brought me to the UAE. So I was at Kraft then, that became Mondelēz. Did that for around 4 years. And then got pushed into the world of beauty, where I joined the Estée Lauder company. So suddenly from, you know, fast-moving consumer goods and cheese, I was suddenly in the world of beauty. So did that for a couple of years in the Middle East, then moved to Toronto with them as a marketing director. then Colgate-Palmolive for a while in Toronto. Not a while, it was quite a while, around 4 years. And then moved to the UK where I was global brand director at The Body Shop. And eventually fate brought me back to Dubai post-COVID. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a great sort of history. And I really like this sort of evolution of your career from cheese into cosmetics. And, what can what did you learn from selling and marketing cheese to being able to do the same kind of thing with cosmetics and beauty? What are the parallels?
Well, so to a layman, there probably aren't many parallels, but trust me, there are. So I think there are two things that help me out there. So one is, at the end of the day, you're selling a product and commodity. The business principles remain the same, right? So you're looking at top line growth, you're looking at revenue, you're looking at market share, you're looking at compelling campaign, you're looking at attracting and retaining customers. So the principles, no matter what the brand, essentially remain the same. I think one of the reasons why I was probably headhunted for this role was FMCG marketeers are kind of considered to be better marketeers than most other sectors. And in the beauty world at that point in time, they did not have many, and I was pushed for it. It was also ironic because Estée Lauder typically was a family-owned business, and they got their first CEO who was non-family from P&G. Ironically, this was 2009 when Fabrizio was appointed. He's still in the industry as a CEO, which is kind of unheard of, 15 years at being the level of CEO. But I think one of Fabrizio's mandates was across all the markets. He wanted people from a similar industry to come and spearhead the marketing. And I think that helped my cause, and that's what I came on board for.
Yeah, I suppose the world of sort of FMCG, there's nothing really more competitive. So you probably need to be at the top of your game in order to be able to excel in that arena. Yeah. And obviously you have moved around in terms of location as well, and as you said, and been in the Middle East on and off over the last sort of 20 years. How does it compare and how has it changed, I guess, in that time between your experiences in North America and in Europe as well? How have you seen this region change?
Massively. And, it's one thing coming, after a span of maybe 9 years back to the region. But even if I compare my first stint and my second stint, I was here in Dubai for the first time in 2007 to 12. And the transformation there was mind-boggling, right? You had Dubai Mall opening, the Burj Khalifa opening, the metro setting up, the Palm Jumeirah opening. This is all during my first stint. And you come back now and, obviously we've gone through a cycle and a recession and everything else. But I think, as someone very rightly said, the only constant is change here. Because nothing stopped them. A funny story that stuck with me. I was at a Trevor Noah show, and he was, in typical Trevor Noah style, he was making fun of Dubai. And he was like, God is walking with the Emiratis, and he walks into a desert, and the land stops by the sea, and the Emirati tells God, we're going to make something in the middle of the sea, and he's like, no, that's not the plan I get you. It stops here, and says who? So it's just changing the dynamics, right? Think about it in very layman's terms, and I get a lot of this in the West, but Dubai is an artificial city. I mean, although it was a desert, you've made a magical wonderland out of a desert. And how is that different from any city, right? London has history, fine, but it's a city. Toronto is the same. New York is the same. It's a city. But there's so much here, more than the city. Like, you can drive into one of these communities here and feel like you're in Europe, literally. So it's quite magical. But I think, and I think this is what I tell a lot of my team. Complacency is the biggest fault of most people. So what I love about Dubai is that they go with these gigantic projects, and as soon as those are launched, they just want to know how they can uplift the game even more, right? At a global stage.
And I think that's part of what makes being here in this part of the world, and it's not just Dubai, it's the whole of the UAE, Saudi Arabia as well is really upping their game. What you talked about there and going to the sea and then extending it out, obviously talking about, for example, the palm.
Yeah.
And somebody raised a really, really good point with me a while ago. And they said, well, wouldn't it have been easier to just build the palm inwards? Mm-hmm. That you've already got the land and you just allow the water to come in as sort of canals, and they could have just reversed it. Mm-hmm. I thought, wow, that's going to be so much easier than reclaiming the land out into the palm. But I think it's that vision and saying, well, nothing's impossible. And that really does transcend everything that is done in this part of the world. And we are seeing it now into Saudi Arabia as well. The UAE has set the benchmark, and now Saudi's trying to sort of up their game and catch up a little bit, and some of the giga projects that are being done there are going to be hugely exciting. Now, when it comes to marketing in the Middle East, have you seen changes in that aspect? Because even in the 7 years that I've been here in the region, I think it's changed massively. I think that the marketing game, public relations, communications, everything has changed. Part of that is a reflection of the technological change, which is globally relevant. But also, I think that the level of talent, creativity, that's also driven forward in that period of time as well. Is that something that you've experienced?
I have, I'll just compare Dubai 1.0 to 2.0 in my 2 stints here. I mean, the first time was traditionally, the traditional marketing, right? So it was pan-Arab television, out-of-home, radio, TV, print, etc. In 2010, when I joined Estée Lauder, we were beginning to get into dialogues on social, because Facebook and stuff prompted. And it was a matter of, us celebrating how many likes we had on our page. That's how primitive it was then, right? You come around this time around and, barely, I wouldn't say barely, but, a significant chunk of that budget has gone away from traditional media, out of television as an example, onto social. And it's all about experience and interactions. It's not just, I put a post and it's not about the like, it's about the dialogue that goes in with consumers. So I think that landscape has changed. There's a lot more emphasis on the customer journey in the virtual space or on the e-tailer space, and also in the in-store space, right? A lot of malls now, I mean, we have fantastic malls, but footfall, I wouldn't say is a challenge. Footfall is still there, but you need to constantly up your game as to 100%. How you get footfall into that store.
100%. And it's gone from being these stores, which was you go in, you buy item, and now it's a whole level of experience. And I think that's so exciting because, and that's been driven a lot by e-commerce and the thrive of online retail. I can just buy the item online. So the physical stores, they need to offer a little bit more. They need to make it more of a social experience, or something that's going to entice, excite, and make you actually physically get into your vehicle and go to that mall. And what they've built is they've built all these incredible entertainment options as well, food options. So you have a rounded experience when you go to the malls. And it is a mall experience here. I wasn't quite used to it. I'd never lived in North America. I'd seen it before when I'd gone and visited the States or Canada, and this idea of sort of mall culture and hanging out in malls, that just wasn't the case for me as a kid. But here, the concept, and I think partly to do with climate as well. You are able to go into a single space and experience everything that is on offer, from retail to entertainment.
No, I completely agree. I think, kudos to the mall managements here. I mean, you think about it back in the day, when Mall of the Emirates came up and people were talking about a ski slope, right? Quite a long while ago.
Go skiing in the desert.
Exactly, right?
What an incredible marketing that is.
Yeah, great PR buzz around the world because it was covered in pretty much every country. But I think what these guys are brilliant at doing, and, I'll take MAF and EMAR malls as an example, is, we talk about the customer journey for a brand. These guys really, and this is a long time ago, thought about the customer journey within malls, right? Because you're coming for an event or to highlight it, and as you very rightly pointed out, you're there for so much more. You're there to eat, you're there to surrounding the events, right? You're there to shop, you're there to do your groceries, various other, or just hang out, watch a movie, etc. And it's phenomenal. One of my favorite examples that I keep quoting of late is, you take the example of Dior, right? As a brand. Dior is obviously a high-end luxury brand, very aspirational, and for the vast majority of people, quite intimidating to come into a Dior store, as is Hermes and various other brands.
Interesting.
But what they've done now is, like, if you wanted to experience the brand Dior, you would have to physically go into a store to do that, right? And if you're intimidated, they wanted to take you away from that. So these gigantic pop-ups that you have in Mall of the Emirates and Dubai Mall, right in the center of the avenue, kind of where footfall happens, kind of gets you into that way. So you pass through it, you get to experience the brand, and you know what? Maybe 2 out of 10 people would end up even buying something from them. So it's a phenomenal example of how you take something that's part of the store and bring that experience to life.
And And obviously, I think the retail sector has obviously changed a lot. We've gone from it all being kind of mall based 20 years ago when you first came to this region, and now most people are finding out what they want to buy online or on social media first. So when it comes to marketing, how do you think that you demonstrate that creativity and either manage to sell things online or through the stores using creativity? Because 20 years ago, it was very much directed into, okay, go to this physical space and this is what we're going to do. We're going to activate that space. Now you've got to activate it online. So a lot has changed in that time. What are your kind of learnings for how brands and businesses have done this successfully and managed to take typically retail first businesses and make them really successful online too?
I think that there are a couple of things. So as you rightly pointed out, the traditional norm for everyone was to go into a mall, experience a brand, try it on, and you go and do it. I think the landscape has evolved massively. So one of my favorite shopping apps, as an example, well, two, Kipson's for groceries, Unas for fashion, right? And what I love about Unas is that you have hundreds of brands there, and I can filter, right? Size small, looking for T-shirt, blah, blah, blah. And it'll give me exposure to all of those brands. The department stores in Dubai are struggling, right? All the rest of the stores, the standalone stores are doing fine, but the department stores typically have been struggling. So if I wanted to, give an example, if I wanted to go in and try on a pair of jeans, I would have to go to 3 different stores to get that look and feel and see what's right for me. With these kind of apps that act as aggregators, what you go is you're exposed to dozens of brands and you pick and choose what's there. And what's even more fantastic is their return and exchange policy, because the biggest ordeal was, I'll buy it and what if it doesn't fit right? This is easy returns, and that was just game changing in the industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, personally, I have a real distaste for returns. I think it's hugely wasteful when it comes to the environment and sustainability. I see it, and you order something. Okay, let's say it's clothing. You try it on, doesn't fit. All right, I'll just contact that driver who will come and pick it up. And as you say, the convenience aspect is there. But I also think it's encouraged a behavior. I think typically people would have gone into the store, they find the right size, and that's the one that they would buy. And the returns would have been much, much lower. Now, well, it doesn't matter. I'll just order 10 of these things, or maybe I'll order 3 of the same thing just because I don't know which one I'm going to be, whether I'm a medium or a large or whatever it happens to be. And you end up ordering it, and you end up almost certainly returning at least one of those items within there. So it increases the number of journeys that those vehicles are doing on the road. And obviously, if they're electric vehicles, no problem. But I think there's a huge number of vehicles on the road that potentially it could be reduced if you just had better technology that enabled people to do the virtual try-ons, which is something that they're now doing. And I think it's a super innovative and exciting area. Also, you've obviously worked in beauty, and now with beauty, you've got the sort of virtual try-ons, so you can see what it's going to look like on your face. So again, it's going to help in terms of reducing the number of items that you're purchasing and not using or wasting.
I agree. And that technology exists. It's evolving, but it exists both in the space of beauty and also in the space of fashion. And it'll be increasingly more common to see the look and feel of how it looks on you from a fashion perspective. And I agree with you on sustainability. Some may argue on the counterfeit that, I'm driving to a mall, I'm driving back anyway, but I get it. I think it's a matter of maybe a bad habit where people are doing exactly as you mentioned, buying 2 or 3 different options, knowing that they're probably going to keep one of the 3 and returning 2. And that I think is kind of an abuse of the system, because sustainability to that thing is an evolving trend and increasingly getting more important in this region. It's picked up a lot in the West, but of late we're hearing a lot of buzz around that. So I think that's going to be more important. And
I think obviously another thing that comes into account is also behavior in the Middle East. I think typically it's been a cash on delivery kind of place. That's shifted, and what we've seen with the e-commerce businesses we work with is that shift from cash on delivery, it's almost skipping cards, skipping, using your Visa or your MasterCard or whatever it is. And it's kind of skipping that, and it's going straight into buy now, pay later. Yeah. The buy now, pay later is taking that chunk of cash on delivery. So we're seeing cash on delivery shrinking, but buy now, pay later, maybe getting towards, 25% of purchases on e-commerce stores. And growing all of the time. The players and homegrown players like Tamara and Tabby, they've really driven things forward in that regard. And I think again that's shaping people's behavior. They know, well, if I buy this on buy now, pay later, I'm not paying anything up front. And I think that's both driving an uptick in purchase of items which perhaps they typically might have waited and saved to purchase, but also, taking that aspect of the cash on delivery. Okay, if I don't like it, I'm just going to return it, and nothing's come out of my account.
No, 100%. And I think the advantage of that is twofold. So one is obviously liquidity and cash flow. I mean, I might find, a T-shirt that I was looking for the longest time, and it's suddenly on sale, and why should I wait to buy it? And now I can, right? Yeah. And the outflow is spread over 3 months, and it's no interest to me. So why would I not do it for perspective? And that also from a retail perspective helps increase basket size, because if your spends are going to be spread out over 3 months, why would I not buy more and indulge more? So I think it's kind of a win-win for both. It's probably what we noticed in the retail sector. It's particularly more in a couple of areas. So a high-end furniture, for instance, is one, because those are bulky items, and you do see a lot of it in fashion as well. Those are the two big ones.
Yeah, and I think buy now, pay later, in its concept of being able to spread things and make it easier for purchases, bigger purchases like a sofa, or purchasing a bed, or instead of putting $2,000 down for that jacket that you really, really want, being able to spread that over a few months. I totally get that. I do think that buy now, pay later may be setting itself up for a fall. I think the sector is perhaps enabling behavior in people that means that they potentially take on and extend themselves too far. And the kind of people who are constantly using buy now, pay later, they're probably not just doing that in isolation. They've probably also got credit cards. And the danger there is that you're building up a massive amount of debt. That's my worry with buy now, pay later. I know that they would argue that they have the right sort of checks and balances in place to enable and make sure that it isn't the case. But the companies themselves, they have to have huge debt facilities, massive ones, the hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars that they carry on their books, and having to find the right partners to facilitate that debt. So again, both for the customer themselves and the businesses, this is a potential area which could be a bubble. So I'm interested to see how this goes, because typically in the past, the likes of Visa and MasterCard haven't ventured into this area, but we've just seen very recently evolutions in that area from the big players who've typically been involved with payments and credit cards. They are now venturing into this area of buy now, pay later. So I can now purchase an item with my Visa, but have a buy now, pay later option. So we are seeing the bigger players. It's almost like the fintechs, the innovative startups have laid the groundwork for the bigger players to come in and say, wow, knock the microphone out of the way. I was going to say, they've come in and swept the field and said, yeah, well, this is possible now. And I think it's just teed things up very nicely for the existing incumbent players. Speaking of existing incumbent players, the UAE has been perhaps the place where people wanted to come and visit in the Middle East the most. Now we're seeing this rise of Saudi Arabia, and it's changing all sorts of different things. The UAE and Saudi Arabia, perhaps they've typically imported brands, particularly in the UAE. They've been bringing in businesses to be part of this landscape. But I think that's now changing. We're seeing the rise of particularly airlines like Emirates and Etihad. And Saudi Arabia is now investing a lot into the aviation sector as well, obviously helping to drive tourism into the region. And from that, introducing as well Middle East brands into global markets as well. It's a very exciting time. What's most interesting about that for you?
Oh, I think that's a great one. And, the whole dynamic of the Middle East, let me speak about the UAE, right? From 1971, the whole discovery of oil, the whole surge in the economy. And Dubai became a place initially where, just as you rightly said, you would have all the global brands available here, and people would come to shop and buy and, have a decent lifestyle. But I think Dubai Holding in particular, even the Abu Dhabi group, they've really invested and built a number of credible brands, right? Who doesn't, to your point, know of Emirates Airlines, right?
Yeah.
I mean, take Etihad, Emirates, Qatar. Those are three players in this region who probably amongst the top 5 airlines in the world, right? So it's kudos to them because they really redefined what the flying experience is like.
And that's probably by a number of metrics. It's the quality of the experience right through to the volumes of passengers that they're ferrying.
Yeah. I mean, one of the fundamental insights was people hate flying because, they used to call the food jail food, which you still get on a lot of oil. But, if you travel on any one of these three players, it's a very indulgent experience. But if you're flying in, one of the better cabins, be it business or first, it's glamorous. And I think that is one. I think, the fact that there are a lot of partnerships going on in the sports arena. Right now, if you go, you have, the Etihad Stadium as an example, and, Real Madrid one, and it's Fly Emirates all over their jerseys. So, they've really tied in with a number of partnerships. But I think that's one. Then you also have things like the Jumeirah Group, which is brilliant hotels that are gone global. Emaar as an example that's taken real estate to many countries around the world. So that is increasingly going to get more popular, and you'll probably see that. And, to your point again, I think a lot of people want to come to this region for two things. One is it's an automatic good stopover from the west to the east. So people come here and, Qatar's realized that, UAE's realized it, Saudi's now getting onto the bandwagon of also going into the luxury airline space. But I think the whole ecosystem when it comes to, hotels and the infrastructure and things to do around it, I mean, Dubai particularly spoils you, right? When you come to the hotel, every hotel, I mean, virtually every hotel is a glamorous 5-star hotel, which you'll struggle to find, particularly in the West, right? There are very few of that, scale that's there. So I think the whole aspect of taking service to another different level is there, and that just uplifts the whole expectation of this region. So a lot of people say, Saudi's catching up and Qatar's catching up. I think it's brilliant for the region. I really think it is. So think about it when we go to Europe, the close proximity of the countries make us go, if you're going to the Nordics as an example, it'll make you visit 2 or 3 destinations, and people coming here will be increasingly doing that. So why wouldn't you go to Dubai, and why wouldn't you spend time in Riyadh with all the development happening there and experience it? Take the World Cup football that happened in Qatar. Yeah. I think the country that benefited the most out of all of that, with probably no investment, is the UAE, because everyone who was going for the games happened to stop over here, spend a couple of days, the weekends, caught up with me. The weather was brilliant because it was in December, and it really helped uplift the whole economy. So I think this whole thing of development in neighboring countries is great news for the GCC overall.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when you have, upstart players, and the reason I'm saying this is that, typically, maybe somebody's heard of Dubai or Abu Dhabi, but like, where's Jeddah? Where's Riyadh? If you're European or North American, maybe you just don't know where these places are. Qatar and Saudi Arabia probably weren't on the global tourism map. Yeah. People weren't thinking about, hey, where am I going to go on holiday this winter? It was, but Dubai was, particularly Dubai. The investment into that tourism infrastructure and everything that goes with that. It doesn't just benefit the tourists, does it? It also benefits the residents and the citizens who live here. But it's geared up to be this global city, which is just, I think you used the phrase wonderland earlier, which is absolutely right. But I think with this, and we've seen particularly with Saudi Arabia's giga projects, it's creating that uplift again in tourism. It's making the Middle East become a more exciting destination as a whole. And I do think that what we're going to see is that Saudi Arabia is becoming more competitive. It's becoming a kind of place which is investing into its tourism infrastructure. They're investing a lot into sponsorships. ownership of football teams, all sorts of things. And I personally think that competition for the UAE is a great thing. You know, you kind of see it a lot of the time in different sectors, that you have one business which has kind of taken a march, or they got to the top of their field. But it's often the competition that pushes them to the next level. I watch a lot of sports. When you've got somebody who's at the top of their game, the only thing that's going to make that person get even better is when there's somebody else who's coming along and pushing them to get better and better and better. And I think it's almost the same as, and I draw on an analogy here. I was watching a social media video the other day, and it was talking about how if you've got a Coca-Cola vending machine, when you go and put your money in, you're basically making a choice between buying a drink or not buying a drink. But when you've got a Coca-Cola vending machine next to a Pepsi vending machine, your choice changes. It's not, shall I have a drink or not? It's, shall I have a Coke or a Pepsi? And now we're seeing with Saudi Arabia and UAE, it no longer becomes a choice of, shall I come to the Middle East or not? It's, where shall I go in the Middle East? And as you rightly point out as well, they might decide to come to both.
100%. And, I just wanted to grasp onto the point you made on competition. Competition, solid competition in every form, just uplifts the game. So if people think Dubai is phenomenal now, it's going to get even better with these giga projects coming up in Saudi Arabia, right? I'll give a parallel analogy, like in tennis, right? You had 3 superstars at the same point in time: Nadal, Federer, and Novak.
Plus Andy Murray.
Fair. But just imagine if one of these players were there without the competition, right? Suddenly those Grand Slams would have been, and these are record Grand Slams. Someone would have won maybe 40, maybe 45 of them, right? So it just shows you the error. Like, if you're competing with Usain Bolt, as an example, you could be the fastest sprinter of your time, but it just happens you happen to be in the same era as him, so you're not going to win.
Yeah.
So it's all about uplifting your game. And, I think that the good bit about this, there's a lot of brotherly rivalry between, different countries, and they all love one another, but, they all lift the game. And I think that's really going to help the overall region as a whole, because it gets into the map. I think the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia very rightly says he envisions this region to be the next Europe in a way, with the development and all the buzz around it, and I could not agree more. I think that's exactly what it's going to be, because the scale of the projects and the vision of the projects are just so futuristic for most nations in the world. It's mind-blowing, and that just creates its whole curiosity factor, this whole PR machine around the world, and it's just fascinating.
When you were at Estée Lauder before, and did you sort of look at it and say, well, I'm delighted that L'Oreal's being competitive against us?
Well, yeah, I mean, L'Oreal has various divisions, so they won't really ask you a competitor, but yeah, I think LVMH was probably a bigger one for us with the likes of Dior and everything else. But yes, I think, if I compare my stint at Estée Lauder in the region, that was a time when there was an increasing focus on realizing that not just how big fragrance is here, but also how the local fragrance tastes are very different from the Western ones. And that's when the whole surge of innovation started happening with, Jo Malone Cologne Intense, and Dior coming up with the Middle Eastern range, and Armani coming up, and everyone coming. And I think that was increasingly fascinating. And, where you got a lot of resistance from global headquarters in innovations, now you had a case saying, we're falling behind because, what Dior is doing and Chanel is doing it, we need it too. So that is leverage, because that's just uplifted the overall game with the region. But, always healthy competition or a competitor is doing really well really keeps you on your toes. And that's really a good thing.
You talked a little bit about regional brands and coming up with ideas, products, things that are really going to appeal to the people in the region. What are your kind of heroes when it comes to brands in this part of the world, and why do you admire them?
I think there are a few, and I'll tell you why I admire them. Right, so I'm very loyal to a couple of brands in this region. I'm very loyal to Emirates, right, and you have to keep in mind how Emirates started with really, really humble upbringings. Right, they leased 2 airlines from Pakistan International Airlines.
This is the story. Okay, right? I don't actually know the story to this.
So Emirates did not have the funds to get airlines. So they leased 2 planes from PIA, hence the code EK, Emirates and Karachi because that was their first flight.
No way.
Yeah.
Didn't know
So
that.
it's fascinating. So now if you fast forward many years, I think they were set up in the mid 80s, right? So roughly or whatever, 30 years later, they're, in my opinion, the best airline in the world. And you have PI, who they leased aircraft from, that's bankrupt. Right, to give you perspective of what vision and hard work can do. So I love that, and that is one of my favorite airlines. I think on a smaller scale, there's so many other brands. As I alluded to before, my go-to, I think, has just changed my shopping behavior and my landscape is Gibson's for grocery. I order every single day. I get fresh groceries to my door, and I cook fresh every day. And there's so many other apps, right? Amazon. Right, anything that you possibly need, and that's fine. That's not regional, but that's global. Is available to you. But that's a brand that's global. That's adapted to the regional things. I think what's also fascinating here is the number of entertainment options that you have.
Let me just sure. Before you go into entertainment, let me just stop you on that one slightly. What do you think the commonality is between them? You mentioned Emirates, Gibson's, etc. What's the commonality between them then? What makes you loyal as a customer for these brands?
I think it's quite simple for both. If I compare, and very different, right? One's grocery, one is aviation. I think it's the promise of good quality service and consistently good service, right? Emirates has, think about it when ICE was launched as entertainment, right? It was game changing in the industry. Right, the Airbus A380 and what they did with it was a self-generating PR machine around the world. Right, the A380 never worked for, I would say, 99% of the other airlines. Emirates made it work, and they were always full. And there's a reason for it. It's an experience. There's so many times I'm on Emirates Airlines and, in one of the better cabins, and I meet people from different parts of the world who are flying it for the first time only because they heard how luxurious it is, standing at the bar, having a drink, all those sorts of things, or showering in the air, as an example. And I think it's that promise of constant evolution, be it the Game Changer Airlines or the A380 or whatever in Emirates, that's phenomenal. Gibson's is good quality, consistent good quality ingredients in fresh produce and other stuff that's delivered to your door within hours, right? And I've never, ever had an issue just with Gibson's on out of stock. If it's not available in the morning, it'll come to my house in the afternoon without me having to do anything. And it's just that, it's unheard of, right? Because it just kind of automatically spoils you. And if you're in any other part of the world after Dubai, you've taken a lot of these things for granted.
It's an interesting one, because what you've kind of said there is that ultimately these businesses, they're focusing in on the product that they're offering and the service that they're offering. So where does marketing come into it? Emirates does massive marketing campaigns. If they're so good, and they are, at what they do, and they're offering great customer service, why do they need to market?
It's a great question. I think they both of the things go hand in hand, right? As if you think of marketing at the very fundamental levels, it's to create awareness of your brand, right? If no one knows your brand. And then, along as you evolve your campaigns, you have your brand promise or your brand essence that you want to bring alive. I think Emirates do that, and they need to continue to do that. So we've seen Emirates Airlines gone from 2 planes to hundreds at the moment, and their ambition is much larger than that. It is to be the number one airline in fleet size and everything around the world. But what they've created in terms of marketing is the whole experience, right? It's not just the aviation; it's the sporting events. Think of there are very few sporting events that they're not associated with. If you look at football, they were all the top teams. You have Arsenal, you have Real Madrid. You look at cricket, they're part of the 2020 sponsors. Rugby, the Dubai Rugby Sevens is one of the best weekend activities in Dubai that you can have. So, they really are there because all of these are an experience and a hub. And again, the whole business class lounge experience, right? This is not even flying. This is before your flight. Was game changing in its own way. So I think that constant promise of the wow experience has been consistent for them to get many more people attracted to the brand.
And I think what you're saying there is essentially that marketing doesn't stop and start with a single advert. There's so many different elements that come into play that build that whole experience.
Correct.
And I think that's quite interesting that you refer to Emirates, because obviously they've got massive budgets. But what about smaller brands? How can smaller brands, take creativity and turn that into something that's really going to attract customers?
I'll give you a classic example, and these are from two of the brands that I worked on, right? One happens to be Unilever and Dove, and one with the Body Shop. Now, keep in mind, the Body Shop campaign I'm referring to was way before my time, and neither did I work on the Dove campaign. I just happened to be in the company at that point in time. But one of the best marketing campaigns that we recall as marketeers is the Dove Real Beauty campaign. Right. So essentially the campaign was you take women of different ethnicities, different body types, and you say this is real beauty because this is the real you, and it's not the classical stereotype model that you always had. And that has been classified as one of the best campaigns in modern times. It's a brilliant insight, fun, used really well. Okay. But do keep in mind Unilever has humongous budgets to promote that. Fast forward into the early 90s, rewind back into the early 90s, not fast forward. The Body Shop with Anita Roddick had the same concept way back in the 90s, but the Body Shop is much smaller in scale.
Yeah,
does not have the budgets, right? I think both are spot on and both are there, but it's all about the relevancy. So a lot of people that you talk about the Body Shop, particularly in the UK, because it's homegrown in the UK, will recall that era of the 90s where the Body Shop was very sustainable, very, out there. And it was an activist brand.
A very value-driven brand.
Very value-driven brand. But again, the whole insight and the premise on a lot of the campaigns of the Body Shop back in the 90s was around real beauty. Right? They were taking natural ingredients with different body types. There were campaigns in which, even armpit hairs weren't shaved off because they wanted to just show real beauty. So very provocative in a way, but also just telling you that beauty is not just being artificially glamorous. But same insight, two different campaigns. One is classified as, best in class because, to your point, marketing budgets do play a role with scale.
Yeah, and obviously marketing budgets now they're being changed, and with the evolution of social media, and driving money into these things, what we've seen with a lot of marketers is that let's just pump all our budget into digital marketing. And I wonder, have marketers forgotten about genuine storytelling in favor of likes and clicks?
It's a really interesting question, and it really, and I'll give the whole region as an example. It really depends on the sector that you're in, right? So if you're in the tourism, aviation, fast-moving consumer good, luxury sector, it's all about storytelling and engagement, right? The challenge which I think a lot of the players in retail are having of late has been taking to your point on the likes, because how they're driving, when you're challenged as a brand, the only lever you pull is discounts and promotions. And when you say I'm on 50% off, you're just getting a like. There's no storytelling apart from awareness that you're 50% off. But I think that's attracting footfall for short-term gains just to make your short-term numbers work. Solid brands are built around the whole storytelling. So
100%,
right? There's no reason for a Nike or an Apple or an Emirates Airlines to not do that. These are big established brands, but the reason why they continue on the storytelling dialogue is because of their whole experience, the whole engagement, that it's so true to their equity as a brand with the consumers. Apple as another example.
And that's why I think it's so important that businesses, and if they do want to be a hugely relevant brand, they can't just pump everything into the short-term wins. They've got to have a long-term perspective on things as well. Another thing that I think is interesting is how people, create content for social media. Mm-hmm. Now, I, again, will challenge this and feel free to challenge me on this as well. But I would argue that social media potentially stifles creativity. And I'll give you a sort of little line on this. So if you think about the video and the content, the algorithms on social media, they encourage you to post the same kind of content. So it knows who you are as either a brand or as a creator. And then it invites others to remix that same content. It perpetuates the content again. And, for the poster, they find a formula that works for them. So then they then rinse and repeat. They stick to that formula. There's nothing necessarily creative about repeating the same thing over and over again. When it comes to text, they use popular phrases, things that are trending. Historically, that's been with hashtags to label and signpost what your content is. From audio, from the verbal hooks that you have at the start of videos, all these plethora of influencers saying, hey, this is what you need to start your social media video with, and people will listen to it. And encouraging the same use of different songs that are popular. So you end up hearing the same song on multiple different influencers' posts or creator brands. And I wonder, is social media just perpetuating the same kind of content? And actually, people are thinking, well, I just want the likes, I want the followers, I want to be able to grow my business or my personal brand. So I'm just going to stick to the tried and tested things, and thereby perhaps preventing them from doing the truly creative, out there, innovative thing.
Yes and no. Right. So I completely agree. So, the whole influx of influencers game, I'm going to treat influencers as a brand, right? There were times and tells when an influencer would take anything because they would capitalize on the revenue associated with them. I think that was kind of a chicken and egg, because a lot of consumers see through that. They know if you're promoting, and literally, a week from now, you're promoting a competitor. So they know people are doing it just for the likes of it. But, one of the whole, and I'll give you an example of a small brand and the whole experience of it, right? And it's a locally grown brand. So Salt Burgers, I don't know if you've ever had it. They're phenomenal, right? So this, they've got an amazing joint at Kite Beach. They've just opened a fantastic new one in the new hotel that's coming up. But the whole Salt experience is phenomenal. They call their tribe, if I may call it, to the Salters, and they have very amazing burgers, they have amazing desserts, and they've kept it simple and consistent. But again, their approach has been on creating a storytelling experience rather than hello, come to Salt, I'm on 30% off, and get whatever, right? Even the whole in the summers they have a great mango dessert, and they create a whole story around the mangoes. So I think it's phenomenal, and their regional expansion is testament to that. Similarly, you have a ton of take Huda Beauty, right? Came up against giants in the beauty world, because I'm from the she used to be, for perspective, an influencer back in the day when I was at Lauder the first time. And she's created a multi-million-dollar brand that's gone global. So a true success story, just on the essence of understanding the makeup needs and skincare needs of the people in this region and taking that global. So I think that those are compelling stories, which, I mean, she could have easily competed on the basis of price. I'm a locally born brand. Hello, made in the UAE or wherever, and here I am on 30% off, and you'd have got 1 million likes. But it's far more than that. It's about the experience. It's about the story and what you're offering that's unique.
I think it's very interesting that you said that. What you're saying about being compelling for the customer, but also having that great understanding of the customers that you're trying to reach. You talked a little bit about influencers, and just bring you up on that one a little bit. Influencers have kind of had a lot of that marketing budget directed their way. I'm of the opinion that people, as you say, are starting to see through the obvious influencer promotion. People having to be a little bit more creative with how they're promoting products, because you can't just be like, hey, I'm just putting on this lip gloss now. Get 10% off if you use my code. People are just like, yeah, I'm skipping through that. It's not interesting. It's you've got to find a more interesting way to do that as an influencer. But I also think in the world and the direction of travel, we are moving towards peer-to-peer. We're moving towards a moment where it's not necessarily going to be this person with 1 million likes, 1 million followers, who's going to be the one that you trust. It's going to be your friend, and that friend being able to advise you. And as has always been the case, word of mouth referral has always been such a powerful tool. Oh, I tried this restaurant last week. You must try it out. Well, you're far more likely to go and try that restaurant from somebody you know and like, your sister or your best friend. They say something, it's far more powerful. It's 100 times more powerful than some person you've never met on the internet. And I think that is the direction of travel. And in terms of that evolution, we are moving into an increasingly digital world. but also a more personalized and tailored world in some regards as well. How do you see marketing evolving in the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
So there's a ton happening in the marketing landscape, right? We called it the digital revolution a few years ago, and I think now there's obviously the whole experiential artificial intelligence space. And I, by the way, 100% agree with you, because word of mouth, particularly from your circle, there are two reasons for that, right? One is credibility, because you trust the person. The second is we all have similar tastes, and that's why we tend to stick around and with people who have similar tastes than us. So your choice of recommendation for a restaurant will very, very well resonate with me, and probably go to it. But I think with this whole immersion and this whole width of artificial intelligence there, what essentially you're going to find is more experiential, tailor-made options or solutions, depending on what you want to term it, to yourself. So, because it could be you like going to a French restaurant with a view for a romantic dinner, and it could give you, the last time I went to Pier Sheikh, all right, looking at similar profiles as Pier Sheikh, what are the other ones around, right? Could it be a Korean? Could it be this? Could it be LPM? And each one will give you a different vibe with a similar look and feel. And I think the other aspects would be, we have reviews now, and I think you can probably take reviews to a more I would say sophisticated level, right? So it's overall reviews and ratings could be whatever, 4.7 and 5, but you could be looking for ambience views, you could be looking for a particular, not just food, but a particular menu on the item that you want to take that through. But I do think with the whole influx of artificial intelligence and virtual reality out there, it is just going to uplift the whole game to another degree whatsoever. Already we see restaurants that have experiences, right? It's not just food experience and the culture and the vibe, right? You have dark restaurants, you have virtual restaurants where things are thrown into your plate from the roof and different things like that. And I think the whole experience factor is really, really going to propel over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's also going to be different ways that people experience things. Obviously, we've got, and I'm not going to say a revolution because they've been around for some time, but the kind of augmented reality or virtual reality headsets, we are seeing more in that regard. And whether they've been successful so far, probably not. I know with the Apple Vision Pro, this was sort of mooted a couple of years ago, and it's gradually sort of picked up a little bit of pace. And I've heard great things from some people and awful things from others. Some saying that it's far too heavy on your head, you can't use it for extended periods of time. Others saying, well, why on earth would you buy a television now? And everything in between. And one of the things about that is I've heard that when it comes to the development of what's you're able to do with, say, for example, the Apple Vision Pro, the developers just haven't caught up yet. It uses its own sort of system, and the kind of traditional developers who've been in these spaces just haven't caught up yet, and that will obviously happen over time. So we're going to see more exciting things happen with headwear, and that opens up a lot of possibilities as well. From a marketing perspective, am I going to see different kinds of adverts appear on my headset? Mm-hmm. Do I have to subscribe to stop them from popping up? How is notifications going to look? Am I going to be watching a program and there's going to be sort of adverts flashing across the bottom of my Vision Pro to tell me to go and buy Doritos? You can imagine that there's so much there in terms of evolution, but no matter what the channel, the content is still going to be the king.
Correct.
That's still going to be the case. Creative ideas and content, that's not going to change. So if I gave you $10,000 right now and you had a B2C brand and I said, look, go and spend that $10,000 on something, how do you spend it?
Ooh, I would definitely go on the experience game and amplify it through social and digital. So what I mean is you create a hub, or you create an experience, and you get people to come to your brand, and you amplify that through social media so that you can
almost like a phygital kind of experience.
Correct. And it could be anything, physically playing with the products, or people coming in to experience the overall look and feel. Like, I was at the, Atlantis Royale the other day, and Unas has a phenomenal one. Dolce & Gabbana has done a phenomenal one. Louis Vuitton has done branding around the hotel. These are all out-of-the-box mediums of taking that experience around the brand. So if you have these huge LV characters around the hotel. Anyone visiting the Atlantis Royal is taking a picture of that, tagging Atlantis Royal, tagging Louis Vuitton, putting on social material, and that's creating a whole ripple effect, right? So for me, it would definitely be about creating talked about viral experiences.
Physical and online visibility.
Correct. And I think physical is key. That can propel online. So that's 100% where I would put my money in.
And would you do anything different if it was a B2B brand?
Maybe a little different. So I'll give you the example of maybe two B2B brands that are doing, and these are both B2C and B2B brands. So let's take Pepsi and let's take Visa, right? Yeah. Both do that really well. So Pepsi are obviously sponsors of the Champions League, and they do that every year. And what they do is essentially they take their clients, the big business vendors, to watch that Champions League in what they call the Pep Zone. So you get to help, experience the whole Pepsi experience. You get front row seats, you experience the final, the halftime, the show, Lenny Kravitz performing, all of that thing.
Yeah.
So I think that is a whole experience that keeps the B2B clients really happy, because eventually that runs into B2C.
So it's actually, you're touching again on loyalty there as well.
Correct. And Visa is doing a very similar thing. Visa sponsors the Summer and Winter Olympics. They're happening in Paris. So I know they are obviously taking all of their corporate clients as hosts in the Visa Lounge for the Olympics, which is absolutely fabulous. So I think they do that really well, because these are experiences which very few people can have, right? The opening ceremony, or watching a 100-meter race, all the Champions League and stuff. And I think that these are very memorable ones, because whoever goes there, even as a guest or a client, again, is propelling it, but to a different degree of envy probably on social media.
And you're probably going to be loyal to them for many, many years ahead.
Absolutely.
So just to round things off, because I know we are kind of running out of time a little bit, in terms of skills as a marketer, whether somebody's starting out on their career or they're many years down the line, what skills would you say are kind of essential right now for the coming years ahead?
I think a couple. So I think eagerness to learn, because that is going to be with you throughout. What I studied in marketing, I don't apply 95% of it now. There's no social digital, there was no artificial intelligence. And trust me, kids are studying now. AI would be a thing of the past, and will be so much more in the future. So always, always, always keep yourself up to date, or you'll be a dinosaur, particularly in marketing, which is ever so evolving. So you need to read up, you need to be relevant, you need to attend courses, you need to do talk shows, you need to be where the right audience is. Constantly learn. I think that would be the first. Humility, I think, is key. Don't ever think you're the best. You may have won 100 awards in marketing. Tomorrow, someone will take you to the cleaners. You have to be humble. You have to constantly strive to uplift your game, because that's the only thing that gets you in the game. And to keep a look around you. For me, what's worked for me, at least in my marketing careers, I've kept an open lens. People from different industries, diversities, completely different dynamics. Trust me, they bring the best ideas to your game. They really, really do, versus someone who's classical foods or classical beauty or classical whatever industry you want to call it. Because only when you get people with different mindsets and different cultures and different insights and different industries, truly you get the best out of the people, because you're seeing things from so many different lenses, and they spark incredible ideas.
That's a wonderful way to kind of round things off. Thank you very much for joining us, Vernon. Where can people find out more about you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Vernon D Cruz. I'm also on Instagram, so you can find me there, DCR Vernon.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I'd love it if listeners and audience can give this show a star ranking on Spotify. Make sure you subscribe, like, all that shizzle. You know what to do. Let's hopefully get more people along to joining the Aeolian Sands podcast. Thank you very much, and join us next time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.